Hang on to your hats. Oh my gosh, we're starting aquatic biomes of the earth. And you thought terrestrial biomes were fun, the land biomes. Now we're moving to the water, going for a swim, right in time for spring break and a little beach time. All right, so let's look at the aquatic biomes. We're talking about water here. And you can see here, lakes, rivers, estuaries. Woo, what is that? We're going to come back to that. We'll look at intertidal zones, coral reefs, the oceanic pelagic zones, and the abyssal zones, the abyss. So the aquatic biomes cover roughly 75% of the Earth's surface. It's a lot. They are the ones that are these biomes are the ones responsible for rainfall and global temperature regulation. Okay, so let's think about rainfall. Where's the water coming from the rainfall? Oh, that's right, it evaporates. And so if you have 75% of the Earth's surface covered with water, then that certainly would be responsible for most of the rainfall. And then global temperature regulation, the notes say by absorbing some solar energy. Of course, the water is absorbing the energy from the sun because 75% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. And so it is absorbing the sun, and so this will help regulate the temperature. So we're not going to have big giant swings because the water is going to stay at approximately the same temperature. It's not going to have these huge shifts. The aquatic biomes also help with oxygen production and carbon dioxide consumption. And this is because the phytoplankton, phyto means light, so the plankton that is going to photosynthesize right here in the photic zone, in this top layer that light penetrates, there's plankton. There's a lot of plankton here. And so it is photosynthesizing, and of course we know that in photosynthesis that oxygen is released and carbon dioxide is used. So that's why CO2 is consumed in this process and oxygen is produced. All right, so let's look at these zones. So we have, like I said, the photic zone, and again, this is where light penetrates. This is that upper region. So if we're just got into the water from the beach, going for a swim, woo, throwing the frisbee right about here in the water. Okay, so right here, sorry, I was getting a little carried away. Right here we have the photic zone. So light penetrates up to this point. Then below it, so here's photic, and then all below it is aphotic. What did we say A means? Yep, ding, ding, without. So it would make sense that this is the region without light. Do you think phytoplankton lives here? That's a good question. Probably not. All right. Then we have this benthic zone. Benthic meaning here, that is the bottom dwelling. These are the bottom dwelling creatures. The benthic zone is the bottom of the ocean. And so it says detritus feeding organisms. Well, detritus, dead, decaying material. It makes sense. Anything swimming up here is going to die, fall to the bottom. So if you live along the bottom here, you're munching on the things that died. All right, let's move on here into the abyssal zone, into the abyss. Oh, it sounds like we should have this deep music here. These are the deepest parts of that benthic zone. So the deepest, deep Mariana Trench kind of stuff. The intertidal zone, think of intertidal. This is the area where the tide goes out, comes in. So this intertidal zone, this is a really, really harsh climate to live in because you're either underwater or you're above water. And so there's a lot of change. The tides are crashing and receding and they're going back. It is a very difficult environment. It's rich in biodiversity, though, so there's a lot of diversity in the life that lives here and the life forms that live here because you have this light, this pure light here for photosynthesis. And then, of course, we have the coral reef. And the coral reef are also very rich in biodiversity. These coral reef, they're often called the rainforests of the ocean, and because you have a lot of places for organisms to grow and hide, and a lot of relationships, symbiotic relationships exist there. These coral reefs are endangered and protected by the law, and you're typically going to find, well, you're going to find them, not typically, they're going to be found in warm water climates are where you're going to find these coral reef areas here. So notice near the equator, you're not going to have them up here in the poles, so you have them close here to the equator. Now, going back over here, in your notes, I'd like for you to draw this picture for me. Draw and label each of these zones, all right? All right, now, you'll also have the same thing. So that was in the ocean. Now we have freshwater. And so in the freshwater, we, again, have a photic zone and an aphotic zone. Now, in a freshwater, we call the aphotic zone the profundal zone. And then this littoral zone means the shallow. So this is the shallow area, and then you have the limnetic zone. And this when you study lakes, it's called limnology. It's the study of lakes. And so you have this shallow zone here, and then this away from the shoreline here. For your limnetic zone. Again, you have your benthic zone, that's along the bottom, and it may or may not have plants. You can see there's plants growing on the bottom here, but once you get below that aphotic zone, you're certainly not going to have any plant growth going on there because there's no light to support photosynthesis. All right, different types of lakes. So the oligotrophic is one. Notice there's not a lot of stuff growing here. There's not. They're very nutrient poor. And usually it's because they're very deep and they're very cold. And so you're not going to have a lot of water a lot of things that can live there. They're very clear. Usually the water's very clear because you don't have a lot of phytoplankton in there. It's just too cold for them. And you don't have a lot of nutrients at the surface. You have very little plant and animals because the nutrients fall down to the bottom. And the thermocline, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but the thermocline is it's hard for this thermocline. And actually, I think we might have talked about that. Let me look here real quick. Sorry. Did we talk about that? Yeah, we talked about thermoclines in 6.1 part 2. And so, so you probably already heard of those already. So that's where that churning, therm means temperature. And so you're going to have this churning of the water. Well, you don't have it because it's cold, so you're not going to have a lot of that going on here. Another type of lake is a eutrophic lake. These are very nutrient rich. Look at all this stuff. Eu means broad or much. These are pretty shallow. The water's going to be pretty warm. You're going to have a lot of phytoplankton here. The water's real murky because of it, and you have a lot of nutrients, dissolved nutrients in the water. You're going to have a lot of plants and animals in here because of that. And then the next one, it doesn't have it in here, but mesotrophic, there's not a picture, but the mesotrophic, these are in between. Meso means middle, and so you'd be somewhere between here where there's nothing pretty much and it's clear, not a lot of growth and a lot of animals, to here, lots and lots. So it's in between. So you're going to see plant growth and you're going to see animals in there, but you are not going to, so it's in the middle. All right, now when we talk about streams and rivers, we have something called headwaters, and this is where they're going to begin, where these waterways begin. So they're located in the mountains, the waters are cold, they're clear, they're fast running, they're nutrient poor. Again, you have these cold temperatures. You're in the mountains. You have a lot of oxygen because that water is moving fast. And you have animals that require a very high oxygen demand and that live there. Things like trout, they have a very high oxygen demand, which is great because there's a lot of oxygen in these. Then you have this midstream, so these are in the middle, so it's coming from the mountain down, and it's in between the mountains and then leading out to the coast. These waters are warm, they're slow moving, you don't have real fast moving water. They're very nutrient rich. They're murky because of the erosion, and they have low oxygen because there's not a lot of movement here. So you have plants and animals that need moderate amounts of oxygen like bass or catfish. Then you have the estuaries. This is where the fresh water meets the salt water, such as Mobile Bay. And it's very nutrient rich because of all the dissolved minerals. The water looks almost black, very rich in biodiversity. But this is the kind of like diluted salt water. You can think of that. So fresh water and salt water mixing together. And then you have this wetlands. And these have water, below water and above water plants. So they're going to have both. There's two different types of wetlands that exist. You have a swamp, which is defined by having these trees, and then you have a marsh, which only has these reeds. Okay, so swamp, big trees, marsh has the reeds only. They are extremely rich in biodiversity. Lots of life forms in here. They are protected by the law, these help to reduce flooding because they hold in the rainwater. Think about it, they're going to hold in that rainwater from the hurricanes. And because the hurricanes are coming in from the ocean, this is where the fresh water and the salt water meet. And so they are going to hold that salt water. I mean, they're going to be able to maintain that and serve as a barrier. And gosh, I know you're sad, but that's all we have for today.